A very warm welcome to all of you. As we talk about this, it's interesting that Business Today in the early 2000s has a property called India's Hottest Young Executives. And we identify talent 40 and below. And we were struggling to find people who were in the leadership team and who were 40. We had to change our rule that year and make it 41 and 42 because we just couldn't find enough people who were 40. And this comes at a time where you have a healthy, robust population mixing in. So how is this playing out? How are companies dealing with tough issues, dealing with grooming and counseling young people who need to be settling into not just their roles, but into leadership profiles? Samik, you know, this whole proposition for Pepsi is the Gen Next. So maybe we can start with you, where you talk about how our company is dealing with it, what is important when it comes to grooming young people for leadership.
Thanks, Shamini, and good evening, everybody. I'll talk about, now I've spent about 14 years with Pepsico, so what I'll talk about will end up reflecting a lot of what we are doing in Pepsico and how we've been thinking in Pepsico, and maybe a little more generally about what I see around. For a company like Pepsico, where you know, our consumer is typically the young person, we do need a young management team and young leaders as much as possible. On an average, the age of our leadership team has been going down, not as dramatically. We are still not in the 30s. We are kind of still somewhere in the late 40s when it comes to the senior leadership team. And fundamentally, what we've been doing is identify, develop, move. How do you identify, making sure that you're really identifying the best talent? That's task number one. Then your whole approach to development. I mean, everybody nowadays follows what is called the 70-20-10 philosophy, more or less. And then how do you sort of give them the right critical experiences as you move them around globally, as well as across functions, across geographies, and all of that.
Ranjita, you know, a lot of it boils down to identification of talent and cross functions. How much of the energy goes in that identification process?
Leadership is a matter of definition. You could be at the junior most level, but you could have some really innovative ideas. So the whole philosophy around that, for me, gets generated and summed up in this quote: your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, they yet do not belong to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their soul, for their soul dwells in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. And to me, this sums up beautifully the development philosophy or the identification philosophy which we practice in Citi. Somehow the whole word training gives me a sense of, you know, we kind of getting people together in a classroom, trying to teach them something. I think with the young leaders and the way they have grown up is very different, and they're socialized very differently than probably my generation. So it does start with identification, and actually starts at the time we acquire talent, where we're looking for certain competencies. And some of the key ones for us have been, you know, people who can look at the big picture. With senior people, you rely on, you know, the vast experience they've had, and hence they have a great judgment skill. With people who haven't been as experienced, we rely on their ability to piece the puzzle together. And looking at this big picture, bringing the right judgment on the table to various problems or, you know, initiatives that that an organization might have. And the third big one would be perseverance. Because there are problems, you know, nothing is straightforward. And there are a lot of things you have to learn, you have to be agile, and the whole, you know, the style flexibility is very important. So those three parameters would hold good for us. In Citi, we've been very focused on 3 E's, especially at the junior level, which is, you know, giving them the right experience, exposure, and education.
People today, the minute they join an organization, they want to be leaders right from the beginning. Whether they are ready for that role or not is different. And it is across levels. So how do you deal with that situation?
Clearly, the simple answer for that is rigor of the training program that we put in. All right, there are some who do better than the others, and those who don't really do as much as well as the others will have to move out. So the training element is the most critical element, and the differentiation, the two ways one, set the expectations, temper their ambitions, at the same time ease them into the roles that they're supposed to get in.
We find a strange situation. Everybody talks about talent pipeline, and yet companies at key points in time are found to be without leaders at a level when somebody leaves. So, you know, why does that perplexing situation arise and they are perennially sort of scouting outside, they are seen desperate, the post is vacant for some time. So what goes wrong? And many surveys also reveal that actually companies are not doing enough.
In a country like India, where there is an exponential growth, you need to have the capabilities of the human capabilities also should go to that level. Unfortunately, liberalization has taken place suddenly. There's an exponential growth in businesses, but the human capabilities to acquire within the organizations were lagging behind. We used to have a concept called 2 plus 2 plus 2. That means if you want to become a managing director of any country, you need to work in two functions. You work in two countries, and you work in two businesses, pharmaceutical, consumer, R&D, vaccine, and so on. You know, it worked very well for 7-8 years, and we have taken a conscious decision, at least in India, consumer at that time, that we would not recruit anybody in the senior management position because we were grooming and there was an encouragement. If you are 70% fit, you try for that job. You've taken that risk.
So I just want to add, apart from the context, there's a huge wave of change from time to time that our industry witnesses. I'm talking about financial sector, for example. Now, you know, when a global financial crisis hits, the whole game changes. And then the kind of leaders you want in the seat are very different. Because you've believed in a certain philosophy, you may not have the pipeline ready. And if you don't change the leaders who are leading the firm forward quickly enough, you'll actually sink. And actually, I've lived through this, and I think the successful leaders were agile. They changed themselves, they adapted themselves to the environment, they learned, quickly reskilled themselves. The ones who couldn't do it actually exited the firm. So I think it's also the whole upheaval of change, and given the VUCA environment, you know, given what's happening, say, in the e-commerce space, given what's happening in the digital space, if I look at the younger generation, you know, there is this, you know, going back to your point about there's this whole need to move forward and be the CEO tomorrow. We're seeing in a spurt of entrepreneurs, because that's one way to do it. So I think the pace of change, the dynamism, and of course, you know, nicely elucidated by Dwarika, the whole context, will sometimes leave you in certain leadership roles hiring from outside, and I actually think it's a good thing. Because infusing some fresh blood in the system actually re-energizes you. It makes you think differently. But if you're 90% of your leadership positions are being staffed externally, that's a problem.
The value of signaling when it comes to this whole space of grooming young people for leadership, you know, how does it play out?
When Claire Thomas took over as a global HR head at the age of 39, many people thought that, you know, she's so young, she doesn't have enough experience, bandwidth, etc., etc. And therefore, will she be able to carry an organization which has 100,000 people and which is, I don't know, 120 years old organization? But the truth is that you needed somebody like her to shake the organization. In fact, she was probably the first HR head who brought HR together. And last 5 years, she has completely changed the landscape of HR in this organization. Okay, now, this is the signal, right? So the signals can be given only if you have role models and if you have success stories. I think that is the best signal you can give. We may be telling people that, yes, we've got lovely programs which are supporting leadership development for young and emerging talent, but if you don't have success stories, people don't believe it. But today, people believe it because your CEO is 45 years old and so on and so forth. Today, I've got general managers who are 33, 34, 35. Now, that's the signal. So you've got to create some success stories. You don't have to give too many lectures. You don't have to make too many presentations. Just have some success stories, and that's the best signal you can give.
My question is, when we groom young leaders and the young leaders rise rapidly within an organization, what happens to, you know, the older, established? I mean, there's a feeling of angst that somebody younger is rising. So how do you deal with those issues, you know?
When you grow up really fast, you know, it is a competitive ladder for anybody. And when you grow up really fast, there will be people who are happy. There will be people who will have this feeling of, I wouldn't say they would be offended, but they'll have this feeling of being slightly left behind. For me personally, what has worked is that whole reaching out and expressing my vulnerability and how I need to engage with them in terms of having them on my side. And I mean, I have a job right now where I have a lot of people who were my peers at a point of time and now are my direct reports. And one of the, you know, when I came back to India, one of the big pitch for me had to be, we are partners. You know, this is not that I'm your boss and I'm working as your manager here. We are actually partners. I need you. And I think when you tell somebody you need them, that places a lot of value on that relationship.
You know, whereas Anurajita has said it from our perspective as a young manager supervising older people, I have seen at a very late stage in my career reporting to a younger man, which never happened to me. So first time a younger man was my boss. So far, all my bosses were elder to me. So there is a change. I think, you know, it all depends both, how both of them handle it, how they take it. If you can make it, I think in last 15 years, what I learned more, not from my bosses or peers, but from my people whom I worked with. Some of them are mentees, some of them are bosses. It's a reverse mentoring. I think if you say she can add value to me and I can add value, then that is the best collaboration which you can do. It is very easy to say it, but sometimes it's difficult. But again, it depends on how the individuals in the same organization, some people can work brilliantly, some places they can fail. I think it depends on the individual skills of both sides, especially the younger manager, how he can get the best out of the elder ones.
We are suffering from one mindset. Instead of defending the existing talent, we are in the race, we are running on the same track to hiring a new talent. Instead of that, the person who's working in your organization from last 10 years, and you hire a GET and putting him on his hand.
So you can see a lot of angst in that question.
Typically, I'd say the thumb rule is maybe 70 to 80% of your people, leadership positions, you should be able to fill internally if you're doing a good job of developing internal talent. Only 20% should come from the outside. And there are enough organizations who actually do that. I mean, in fact, I've been in situations where I find that, you know, where I found that 80, 90% of roles are being filled internally, when I've had to push back and say that, you know, are we setting the right standard? It's about balance if you do it right.
Thank you all for coming today, this evening, and it was very exciting when we thought of this subject, and it was even more interesting that so many of you you were so passionate about industrial relations and wanted to talk about it. So it's very heartening, and warm welcome to all of you. We've seen a spate of problems across factories, across many of the locations across India. Some of them have had very sad results, as we know of, in the case of Maruti. So I would like to throw open this session and ask each one of you, what is it that really you want to talk about this whole space of managers being ready for industrial relations?
This is a big challenge which is coming in the public sector, where we do find people not very attracted towards this type of job. I got almost 14,000 officers vis-a-vis 10,900 workers. So my IR is not handling the workers, because my worker force is lesser than the executive force available with me. So my IR will be more of a taking the younger group, especially the JNY employees, who are not very keen to stay at all remote places. We know most of our plants are located at very, very remote places, not well connected. And especially JNY boys and girls, they would be looking for an employment, preferably, of course, a white-collar job, and not trying to, if I am working in a thermal plant, probably that is a professional hazard of getting polluted. I mean, I have to work in a coal handling plant, I have to work in ash handling plant, and definitely I have to spoil my clothes as well as spoil my health also. The issues are different. No MBA teaches you how to handle all these issues.
You have to learn on the job, you're saying.
Obviously, there is no, first of all, your curriculum is defective. Nobody tells you how to handle these issues. And your entire MBA, IR, strategy, whatever you say, in the best of your institute, I have seen the best of my boys with me, and virtually I have told them better you quit this job because this is not the place for you. You come with a very high expectation, but you don't get me a result which is absolutely making a report and doing some photocopy. That is not the intent I have.
So actually, in a sense, you're talking about how equipped really, very few are really equipped, you're saying.
This course has to be all changed. This course, tell me, what is the point in rotting those IR regulations, labor laws, when there is hardly any labor left in the country?
My message to youngsters is, don't confine employee relations only to manufacturing sector. I think, you have not seen the other side of the coin. I am only concerned and worried if the managers, whether HR or a line manager or a technical manager, if it is not equipped how to handle with people, the problems you face from the workforce, which are more educated, cultured, white-collar workmen, you see sometimes in banks, sometimes airlines only strike. But service industry, BPO, call centers, all this can create huge damage to Indian GDP and growth and also labor relations. We don't know how to handle. When junior doctors went on strike, people didn't know how to handle it. So my message is, you should take it as a part of the holistic approach to the management. It is imperative for any business manager or a HR manager to appreciate and understand the principles of employee relations.
My first Gherao was I was 23 and a half in Calcutta. And like Dwarka Garu said, because of the industrial relations, I learned OD, I learned human resources through industrial relations. I'm not bragging that it is the right thing to do, but the fact is that having lost the focus, IR has not become or is not seen as a sexy part of HR. And there's a very vicious circle. Good people are not coming in. But again, there's a misconception that employee relation or unionization happens with blue-collar workers, low strata of the society. I come from ITES background of Motorola and IBM, also part, again, manufacturing from Unilever.
Yes, and you have a global experience.
But the fact is that we are ignoring the very hidden likelihood of a danger of white-collar unions. Today, we are missing out engaging with people and listening because we are becoming either too smart or too tech-savvy, or we feel that nothing will happen. As long as you pay them well, give them recognition, give them reward, give them promotion, nothing will happen. I think employee relations, and really would like to add my compliments to Business Today because this is one area which we need to bring back to limelight. It is not just because it's required, it is a business imperative. If we don't do this particular aspect well, business will suffer.
When I look at the question that how equipped is today's HR managers to handle industrial relations, I think they are very well equipped. I started as a Mazdoor. So I have experienced the pain of the hard work and what it means and how it feels when you are not extended humane treatment. See, I came and joined Honda Motorcycle and Scooters India after 2005 Lathi Charge incidents in Gurgaon. And I was the sitting vice president of Tata Workers Union at that point of time. So for people it is a job change, for me it is a paradigm shift. So maybe the opportunity was there because none of the stalwarts of industrial relations were willing to come and take this assignment, so the doors were open for me. And then I did the first settlement in 2006 and second settlement in 2009. When I was doing the second settlement in 2009, one of the, first I will tell you about the demand that was raised. The demand was, give us an increase of 2 lakh rupees per person per month. So I called the meeting of the union. I said, what is the logic behind such a demand? He said, "Arey sahab, aapko 2 lakh rupiya milta hai mahina ka, to hum log ko kyun nahi milega?" So I said, but I am the only general manager in the company. So I can extend 2 lakh rupees to one of your president or general secretary or whomsoever you say, and let us finish the agreement. They said, no, हमको तो 2 लाख रुपए हर employee, हर member के लिए चाहिए, and there were 2,000 permanent employees. So I told, अच्छा ये board में लिखो यार कितना amount होगा. So it took 15-20 minutes to come at the right figure. And then after 4-5 days, because there was some confrontation going on, one of the union leaders started saying, इसको तो जब तक इसका तो जब तक काम नहीं होगा तब तक यहाँ पर कुछ शांति होने वाली नहीं है और सेटलमेंट होने वाला नहीं है. So I gave a very deep thought to it, and I don't take much chances. I am a very weak man from inside. So I move with gunmen and everything in place. So because I know the lot which I am handling. So I left all my security guys, drivers, and I drove to the house of that person who was telling all around that he has to be eliminated if we have to do the settlement. And I go to him, he opens the door. It is November, and then he says, why have you come here? October, in fact. I said, आपसे बात करनी है. And he says, बात तो office में भी हो सकती है. Why have you come here? I said, no, I want to talk to you. And when I was saying this, there was an old woman standing there. She comes inside. So I asked him, कौन है? So she says, मेरी दादी है. I get up and touch her feet. And she says, चिरंजीवी भव. मैंने कहा, माता ये तो अभी बोल रहा था उड़ा देंगे, तुम बोल रही हो चिरंजीवी भव. It took me almost another 15-20 days to break the ice, and finally we settled that settlement for 4,500 rupees per month per employee for a period of 3 years. What you are will ring in their ears. You will have to earn your respect as a IR man, and it has to be mutual trust. And credibility does not get built up in a day. It takes time.